Real people, real interviews.
I just have to say that I object strenuously to your use of the word hilarious.
Hard-hitting questions.
What do you think about feminism? Do you like it?
Taking you to the cutting edge of truth.
Yeah, well, Last Jedi is one of the worst movies ever made, and it was very clear that Rian Johnson doesn't like Star Wars.
Kyle pulls no punches.
I want to ask how you're able to sleep at night.
Ethan brings bone-shattering common sense from the top rope.
If I may, how double dare you?
This is the Babylon Bee Interview Show.
Welcome to the Babylon Bee Interview Show. I'm Kyle Mann.
I'm Ethan Nicolle.
You did a very good job being prompted that time.
Thanks.
I looked at you.
I always try. Yeah, well, we're making eye contact, so it helps.
We are sitting across.
And I never know, because you generally start shows, but I never know what's going to happen the moment you start talking, so I just try to...
Yeah,
I stand here at the ready, like...
And sometimes I do weird stuff, and you just stare at me.
Yeah,
it's just bad.
You're a wild card.
But we're looking at each other in the eyes, but there's someone who's here only in spirit.
We can't see his eyes, but we assume that they're normal human eyes and not strange reptilian eyes or anything weird like that.
But who knows?
We'll never know.
Yeah, we will never know. But we are talking to Dr. Jeff Myers, who's president of Summit Ministries, and he wrote a book called Unquestioned Answers.
Is that a democratically elected president, or is that just... I don't know how that works.
Yeah, it's an electoral college system.
Does he have the power to end people's lives? Sorry.
He runs drone warfare on other ministries.
Other ministries.
Yeah.
Takes him out. Fire.
It's a sovereign nation, Summit Ministries. So tell us a little bit about Summit Ministries.
Well, students are coming here when they're on their way to college because the climate that we're a part of right now is so crazy for young adults. But we want to help them gain a biblical worldview. So they're coming in with big questions that they want to have answers to, but they're also coming in having to test a lot of the assumptions they grew up with. So yeah, they have unquestioned answers and unanswered questions.
So like apologetics, like they're learning, like college is going to tell you that the devil's not real, but then you guys are like, oh yeah, he's real.
Yeah. Here.
Yes, exactly like that, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Sorry, that was off the top of my head. I wasn't ready.
Yeah, so they're coming here for 2 weeks at a time. We're in a little hippie town called Manitou Springs. It's right at the foot of Pikes Peak. Very new age sort of community. So everything we tell them about what their professors will be saying and all of that, they can just go downtown and test it all out, see if it's really true.
So it's sort of like a de-hippification business that you're running.
Oh, yeah. I had never, that needs to be part of our mission statement. I hadn't quite ever done that before. Thank you. This was worth the price of admission right there.
We're here to help. So yeah, your book, you have a new book out, and it's on this piece of paper that I'm looking at, but it is called Unquestioned Answers. And from my understanding, your book is about, well, it'd be better if you just said, because you wrote it, what your book's about.
The whole point of the book is to call into question a lot of the cliches that Christians believe that keep their thinking at a shallow level. One thing we noticed with our students, and I spent a lot of time on college campuses, is that unquestioned answers make us vulnerable. If you believe something growing up, but you never really test it out, when you go into college, you'll look stupid really, really fast. And the second thing is it disillusions us because, there are a lot of people out there who've gone through really tough times, and just giving a bumper sticker kind of answer to their questions actually turns them off. I tell our students here, look, we're called to be fishers of men. And you don't catch fish by skimming the surface. You have to be able to go deep. But then the third thing is, and this is where it comes back to why I love what you guys do at Babylon Bee so much, satire. It actually removes shame from the equation of how we think through things. I mean, my students are going to campus, and everything they hear is shame on you for believing what you believe, shame, shame, shame. And their professors have no idea that shame doesn't really produce actual change. It just causes people to not want to talk to you anymore. So for all those reasons, I think Christians should get rid of the cliches and be able to go a little bit deeper. And so anyway, we'll see if anybody agrees.
One of the early Babylon Bee articles that Ethan wrote was, "Congregation prays graduating senior be protected from basic secular arguments they never bothered to prepare her for." And it's like this whole church sending them off like, well, we just pray
Laying
that,
their hands on her.
we never bothered to instruct her on any of these arguments, but
we're sending you out into the world, dear.
Thoughts and prayers,
That's right. Yeah. Here's your little Hallmark greeting card to keep this on your desk. And that's it. Yeah.
Slap a Lee Strobel in her hand and shove her out the door.
Yeah, a Lee Strobel. Give her a copy of More Than a Carpenter, and you're good.
Off they go.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, it's sad how little preparation these students are getting on there, and they want it. They want to know answers. I mean, I was one of those kids. I came to Summit Ministries as a student, which is how I ended up. Ultimately, I was the only guy left, so I got to be president. But I became as a student and walked into the lobby of this antique hotel where we operate the program, and I asked David Noble, the founder, guy standing there. Big, thick glasses. I said, "Hey, I hope you have a lot of answers because I have a lot of questions." I was 17. I thought I knew it all. And he said, "We're not afraid of questions at Summit." And it was so simple, but that's exactly what I needed to hear. I just wanted to, I knew that anybody who said, "We have all of the answers, just trust us," was full of it, but I'd never met someone who said, as a Christian, it's okay to ask questions. I thought questions were a form of doubt, and doubt was a kind of sin. So, if you have questions, you just don't bring them up in church. And Summit flipped that whole thing around for me.
Yeah, that was one thing that early on, or not even early on, I mean, a few years into my faith, it actually, when I read Ecclesiastes for the first time, I went, wow, it's part of the faith to struggle with and to question and there's just there's a realism to the language in that book. And then I realized there's other places in the Bible where, struggling with God is, it's a part of the faith. And I do believe that in true Christianity, there are more questions you're allowed to ask than in any other faith, including secularism, even though they would claim to be open to all questions. There really are questions that aren't okay to ask in a secular worldview, but in Christianity, I feel you have, unless you're, really scared of questions, which I think is a bad thing.
Yeah, well, right, yeah. I mean, it'd be terrifying to grow up in a world where it'd be like Eastern Europe, where everybody knows that they can't talk about what's really true, and so they pretend that this fake world is the real world, and all of a sudden everyone's confused about what to believe, and the end result isn't that people become convinced of a new worldview. The end result is they just become cynical about everything and just quit trying.
So how many atheist professors have your students converted by singing "God's Not Dead" in the class?
Oh,
they don't sing it. They play it on the
boom
boombox.
box. Sorry.
So he'll hold it over their head and stare into their eyes.
No, all they do is send them a text, and it happens. It's that easy.
God's not dead. I remember when that movie came out, I was getting texts from friends.
What?
Because have you seen God's Not Dead?
No,
At the end of the movie, I think, if I remember right, it says like a message on the screen. Pull out your phone and text all your contacts. God's not dead.
Oh, what?
So I was getting like people that were going to the theater and texting, God's not dead.
Wow.
So, and it converted me. That's how I became a Christian.
Oh.
I'm just kidding.
You were an atheist professor?
I was an atheist professor.
Did you get in a car wreck?
And I got in a car wreck and I died outside of the Newsboys concert.
And that text revived you?
Yeah. So you're an expert in, doctor. You're an expert in Christian phrases and cliches that people use. And these, we have a list here of some that we'd like to...
Yeah, we'd like to get you to dispel these.
School you on.
Or own you with them, however it goes.
Yeah.
All right, I'm stretching right now.
However the tide may turn.
Yeah. So, there's basic atheist arguments, like if we evolved from monkeys, then why are there still monkeys? That kind of stuff. But we kind of want to dig more into like the bad Christian cliches, and I think your book covers a lot of these.
Or awesome Christian cliches.
Or awesome ones, yeah. Thank you for correcting me there, sir. So here we go.
So, for instance, let go and let God. Especially a good for mountain climbing.
That's right. That's where you find out whether you really have faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
It's kind of it's almost as if we think our bumper stickers are the things that fulfill the gospel, right? You know, Jesus said, "Go out into all the world and put on a bumper sticker," and that's how we're going to do it. I know people in my town believe that. You know, most of my neighbors are really far left. Somebody said, "Oh yeah." Somebody said, "Well, I bet they all vote for Bernie Sanders." I said, "Oh no, Bernie Sanders is way too conservative for my neighbors. Way too conservative. They'll pick the farthest left person on the ballot, but they really honestly believe that if they can just put a bumper sticker on their car, and that'll settle the argument. It'll make people shut up, and if people are quiet, then that means you win." So,
well, you know, you sound really judgmental, and we're not to judge. As Christians,
ever.
Oh, of course.
Nothing.
No. Nothing in this conversation should be interpreted as.
You shouldn't even judge the distance between yourself and the edge of a cliff when you're standing there and stepping forward. No judging.
No judging.
Yeah. But Jesus, take the wheel. That's involved. You know, you can do a bumper sticker, which is great. I think that's a huge ministry. But then also, if you let Jesus take the wheel, then that's double. While you're driving around, you are double ministry.
I never thought of that before. It's sort of like a spiritual Tesla computer program.
Yeah. It's the Elon Musk car of spirituality.
Oh,
Kyle,
wow.
You got any, Kyle?
Well, you know that God helps those who help themselves.
I saw that in a cartoon about Noah's Ark.
Really?
Mm-hmm. I remember I once quoted that to my dad. Told him it was in the Bible.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
That's one that everybody always thinks is in the Bible.
Yeah.
I saw a little survey that said half the young adults in America did not know that Sodom and Gomorrah were not married. They literally, they thought, yeah. So
that'd be a huge marriage. A lot of, it'd be wild.
Tumultuous, yes.
Yeah. Let's see. How about this one? Drop kick me, Jesus, through the goalposts of life. Does Jesus drop kick us?
I have never even heard that one before. I got to get my.
That's a Bobby Bear song. It's an old country song. Drop kick me, Jesus, through the goalposts of life. Anyway.
What does that even mean?
That's real.
What does it mean?
It means, I can't do this alone. I need to be kicked into the air.
Judging us when you say that is real.
It's a real song. I'll have Dan play a clip of it real quick, and maybe have to be in the subscriber portion so we don't get.
But in this metaphor, you're not on Jesus' team. You're the ball.
You're the ball.
He crumples you up into this little sphere.
Yeah, he crunches you into a pointy ball shape, drops you, and then his foot comes at full force and launches you into the air, and you go through the goalpost, and then he probably does some kind of a dance at the end and slams you into the ground again.
I think a whole new religion is being formed right here on this show.
People love their football.
Just wait for it. Wait for the foot.
So when there's only one set of footprints, it was then that Jesus carried you.
Was kicking you
through the goalposts.
Mm-hmm.
So in my English class, in my senior year of high school, this girl did this presentation, and it was on some old poem, and there was the word footprints in it. Mm-hmm. And she had a whole section in this presentation about how this is a reference to the biblical poem, The Footprints in the Sand.
It was in the Bible?
It's an allusion. This poem was written in the 1500s or whatever. She's like, this is a biblical allusion.
Wow.
And I raised my hand, and I was like, that's not in the Bible.
Actually.
I had to be the jerk.
She was on such a roll until then.
So
I need more of my spiritual walk to be in sand, because that's the problem. Is I never see Jesus' feet because I'm always walking around on like linoleum and carpet and stuff.
Man, you got to get outside.
When you saw the smudges on the linoleum.
Yeah.
When you only saw one smudge. That was Jesus.
When you saw the footprints in the Cheeto dust in your living room.
That's when Jesus drop kicked you through the window.
We just sit here and crack each other up, Jeff. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry about
this. All right. No, you're good.
But we're not stopping. I do have a question. How reckless should a Christian's love be for Christ? Since his love is so reckless for us, according to that song, on a scale from shoving my way through a crowd to causing a 50-car pileup on the freeway.
Oh, wow. I have to go toward the 50-car pileup.
Okay, yeah, extreme.
I think that's a lot more. Yeah, that's a lot more impressive.
Just massive carnage. Fire.
You should be so reckless. You should be willing to drop kick Jesus back through the other set of goalposts.
Just a constant drop kick, just back and forth.
Just hanging out with Jesus.
Drop kicking each other.
What is even happening right now? All right, how about one that's actually in your book?
Okay. Those aren't in his book?
Actually, the judgment one was.
Oh.
How about this? God said it. I believe it. That settles it. What do you think about this, Jeff?
That's the one I heard when I was a little kid listening to a pastor. And he said something that he thought was really obvious, but I could tell by looking around that the people in the congregation did not like it. So it was a small enough church, you could actually hear some of the rumblings. And he just held up his Bible and he said, well, if you got a problem with this, don't take it up with me, take it up with God. And the way he said it, even as a little kid, I was sitting there thinking, is there something really wrong with this? I don't see what he sees. Anyway, but then I don't know if you've ever seen this video. This is worth YouTube all by itself.
It's worth YouTube's existence.
Worth YouTube's entire existence is the video. Just Google this. God said it. I believe it. That settles it for me. And the video comes up, and it is a pure 1970s, including probably, the Vaseline on the lens, and just some girls and, dresses singing, God said it, I believe it, that settles it for me. And then a bunch of guys come out in powder blue suits. I'm not making any of this up, from behind a tree, like elves. And then they join into the song. And I just, it just scarred me. I think it actually was the problem.
I'm lingering on a thing you said. Are you saying they put Vaseline on lenses in the 70s?
Oh, isn't that the way they make it look so... you take away all your wrinkles. And,
like they smudge Vaseline all over
the days before GCI, the CGI, yeah. They just...
That's how they make it kind of soft. They soften it?
You soften the person, make them look angelic.
Oh. So it's not that the camera has to like cram through any tight spaces or... No. That got wrong. I'm sorry. Okay, continue.
Don't worry. That part gets edited out.
Yeah, we have an editor.
But, it was crazy. When I thought about it, I thought everything in that saying brings it down to me, what I think and what I feel. And that's where it started to really bug me. If this is about me, then why do I need the Bible at all? So... been doing a lot of rethinking about it.
Well, let's think. I mean, what bugs me a little bit about that one, not bugs me, but something that's interesting to think about is that there is some truth to the fact that God said something in the Bible.
And we have to deal with that.
And we have to accept it for what it is, and we have to think through those things. But I guess to me the issue with a saying like that is you're right. It puts my belief as the thing that settles it, and it's something where we're not even wrestling with it. It's just
like, how do you know how do you know the Bible's legit or something like that?
Sure.
Right. Yeah.
Like, don't even question it.
So why don't we write out the questions that we've got and see if there are answers? I mean, tons of people, we have speakers come to Summit Ministries every summer whose whole goal in life is helping people answer questions about the Bible, looking at the internal evidence, the external evidence, what does it mean to say the Bible's inspired or inerrant, and really digging into it. But just to say, because my pastor said this is true, I'm just going to accept it and move on. Stop thinking about it. All of a sudden, your faith is on the margins of your life, right? Rather than at the center. It's something that, that's taken care of. I can set that one on the shelf. Now I can go on with everything else.
Well, you know what they say. Love the sinner, hate the sin.
Oh, gosh.
That's right. They say that. Man. They say that in Jeff's book.
That's the one I think probably is going to be the most upsetting. I did a workshop on this the other day, and I could I brought that one up. I could see people glaring at me. I said, well, look, does God love sinners? Yes. Does God hate sin? Yes. Does that put us in a position where we should say that to somebody else? Because if I'm saying to somebody, well, I love you, but I hate your sin, what I'm essentially saying is that your sin is worse for you than mine is for me. And again, I'm bringing it right back to me. I'm making myself rather than the Bible the standard.
Wrong.
I don't know why that made me.
Well, you said like you were going to start responding, and then you didn't. So
I was waiting for affirmation, and I didn't get it. It's okay. It's all right.
How about another one? 3 nails. This is a math problem. 3 nails plus 1 cross equals 4 given. That's math. 3, 1, 4.
Have you turned that into a T-shirt yet?
I think it already exists.
It's probably yeah. We Googled church signs.
Our extensive research to interview you consisted mostly of Googling church signs.
No, that's great. No, that's serious. I mean, taking that 1 minute made all the difference.
If you want to contact God, try Email. Huh? That's just a dad joke.
Maybe all church signs are just a dad.
Yeah, a dad having fun. Yeah, I mean, most pastors are dads, I guess. They have a pastor's kid who's standing there looking at that sign, going, "Why, God?" Okay, so you talk in your book about simplicism. So how's that different from simplicity? Like it's a religion of simplicity. Like I am a simplicist.
Yeah, I think it is. Have you ever had that experience where you're hearing somebody speak on a topic and then they just summarize the whole thing in one clever little phrase and everybody goes, "Ooh, that's good." And they all write it down. That's what I'm talking about. Simplicity, I'm not really all that into it, but I think it's probably a virtue, wanting to live a less complicated life. But simplicism, and again, I thought I coined it, but then I Googled it, and you don't coin anything in the day of Google. It's just already there. It already exists.
It's a full religion with leadership and everything already.
It's already, yeah, that's right. Fundraising mechanism, everything.
They have a pope. Yeah.
So, is it true that something isn't true unless it's easy to understand and summarize? I mean, that'd make for a nice life. Mm-hmm. That's a tricky aspect of faith. And the people that I hang out with in my town, they want a lot of answers. I was talking to a guy the other day. He was an atheist, and I said, "Hey, I'm writing this book." He said, "What's it on?" I said, "Well, I'm trying to grapple with questions like, how could God be good if there's evil in the world? What about hell? Is that fair of God? Isn't the Old Testament anti-woman, anti-gay, pro-slavery, all of that?" And he just sat there very quietly, and all of a sudden he said, "I have all of those questions." And I thought, wow, this is amazing, because I had always been led to believe that non-believers are people who have thought all this through and intentionally rejected it. And Christians are the ones who just don't really think it through, but just automatically accept it. And it was a lot of fun to realize, wow, this is a different world than I thought. I can actually talk to my atheist and agnostic neighbor and say, hey, here's something that I'm thinking. This is what I'm thinking about what the Bible means. Can you give me some feedback on it? And it's legit. So I'm having these kinds of conversations all of the time, and it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more fun than just, God said it, I believe it, that settles it for me.
Would you say it's a moral thing? I mean, I struggle with this because this is the kind of mind I have. I mean, when I was around 19, I've told this story on this podcast before, but I wrote every question I had out in a notebook and kind of set out to answer all these questions. A lot of them were the ones you just listed. And I went through a struggle of faith. I talked to atheists and argued with atheists and found things in the Bible I didn't realize were there, or that I didn't have an argument for. But I also realized that there's a lot of Christians that just don't think that way. And I almost have an envy for some of the ones that they can be very simple and they're okay with it. I don't know. But then there's also people that are atheists that are like that too. Or, they're I think go to so far as to, usually if you're an atheist, you've thought some about what you believe, but then there's people that just kind of have a few platitudes and they just go along with those. And I wonder, is it more a personality trait or a way that some people need that and some people just don't need it? Or is it a moral thing? Like, if you're being simple with your faith, are you sinning?
Do you think it's happening more? Or I mean, I'm wondering if it's a function of time. The more complex the world is, the more I need certain things to be settled so I don't have to worry about them anymore. In other words, I'm not trying to...
Oh, yeah. I'm just saying, people came from not long ago. We were all living in smaller groups, and it was easier to... This is what everybody says. This is what everybody believes, and you never really think outside of that. Now it's different. We're all being rapid fire pelted with different ideas and challenges all day long and information. So it probably does have another effect that we just kind of pick and choose the things that feel best and just kind of believe those. I don't know.
Yeah.
Are you asking us questions?
Yeah.
We'll ask the questions.
Wait. Who's being interviewed here?
This is such a this is a big deal for the students that we work with when they find that atheists or non-believers or whatever, people who are believe things that are not part of the Christian worldview, probably haven't given it a lot more thought than Christians have. So I think you're right. I mean, there's something about everybody just wants it to be simpler. Everybody just thinks that, man, if I could just get it down to a quick phrase that I could give somebody if they ask a question, then I can deflect the argument rather than absorb it. And I don't know. We're teaching our students at Summit that most of your conversations are going to start with something like, I'm curious. Why do you say that? I'm curious. Do you think that's the whole story? I'm curious. What do you mean by when you say there is no God? What do you mean by God? And when students are learning to ask those kinds of questions, you can see a lot of that anxiety melt away. Oh, wait a second. I don't even have to have an answer for that. I just need to engage with the person in a dialogue and just see where it goes.
So, because it does say in Scripture to be ready with an answer. And I'm curious how far we take that. Like, is it, because there are people like, guys like you. We had Greg Kokel on. We just had Jeff Durbin on. Guys that are like full-on apologists who debate atheists. Are we all called to be that vigorous in our research? Or I'm not trying to pin you down. It's just something I'm curious. Like, I get curious about that. Like, what is our calling in that area to have those answers?
Well, when Greg teaches on tactics at Summit Ministries, his approach is brilliant. That you're always starting with questions, that you have to show that you're present in the conversation and that you're willing to listen before anything that you say will really matter. So our point is find ways to keep the conversation going rather than to shut it down. And I think that's pretty it's pretty consistent with the way Greg teaches it. But at some point in the conversation, you're going to have to say, gosh, there is something that you just brought up that I am curious about. Or here's an answer that I learned that, let me run this by you and see what you think. But it's all done in the context of the conversation. So, our students their library is growing. They're getting books by, Evidence Advances a Verdict by Josh and Sean McDowell, Tactics by Greg Koukl, the Handbook to Christian Apologetics by Douglas Groothuis. Those kinds of things are being a part of their library, but they're using it in a totally different way. They're not using it to win. They're using it to invite conversation and dialogue, to reestablish community rather than to prove that they're right. It seems to me that when you do it that way, the defensiveness goes away. And when the defensiveness goes away, the fear goes away. I don't even have to have an answer at this moment, because that's not this is not a contest. This is a conversation.
But if God is real, then how come rabbits eat their own poop?
You stole my atheist argument that I used on Greg Koukl.
I know. So we owned Greg Koukl. He had no response to that. And now we're owning...
I was just looking.
Dr. Jeff Myers.
My rabbit, we have a rabbit, and I was looking at its poop yesterday.
Wait, what? You were just...
And I realized there are some poops that look kind of like they're made of little hay balls, and there's ones that look like little black ones. So I'm like, oh, he must eat these ones, and then those are the second phase poop and the first phase poops. I'm sorry.
Idea.
I am so sorry, Jeff.
You really studied this.
I once heard an atheist debate that the way his proof of that there's no God is because rabbits digest poop they digest their food by first they poop it once, then they eat it, and then they digest it again because their digestive systems can't handle one pass through. So they're imperfect, which means God messed up on rabbits. And I just thought it was kind of a hilarious, fascinating argument. Maybe God just thinks it's hilarious if rabbits eat their own poop or something. He's funny. He's got a sense of humor, I assume. But so Kyle brought it back.
Dr. Jeff Myers is currently frantically Googling.
That's right.
He went through 8 years of school. He's a doctor. He's got a PhD. And here he is talking about poop with a couple of the guys who have been dubbed the Christian Beavis and Butthead.
It all comes down to the rabbit poop. This is awesome. No. Tell me more about that. I'm ready.
That's all I got. But I'm glad I was able to share that update from the other day, seeing my rabbit. How about choose the bread of life or you are toast?
Oh, was that on a sign? That was actually
these metaphors are very confused because they're not the bread.
Plus,
Jesus
I like
is
toast.
The bread.
Yeah. Choose the bread of life or you are toast.
I know, but
you're the toast.
It's just
of
word
death.
association jokes. It's not even a good pun.
Choose the bread of life or you are the toast of death. That's what I'd change that to.
I'm still mulling over that I am the football and not on God's team. That just
that you're getting kicked through the goalposts.
I am. I have just never had a day like that.
It's a good song.
Yeah, I don't know. I've met people who are very like, and I grew up with people, good Christian people that were very like, just have faith, and they were okay with that, and they didn't feel like they needed to have an answer to everything. I'm still kind of wrestling with this because it's, to me, I had to go out into kind of the world of having these answers. When I was like in high school, I had to go out and read apologetics, and it was like this whole world. But I think for me, it even got to a place of being unhealthy where it's like I need to dissect and debunk everybody else's worldview.
Yeah, I got to that too, like being the atheist destroyer online.
And then it was like my faith would go from like a very strong, if I want an argument, to like, I don't have an answer for this. And my faith was very much based on how good the argument, or how whatever my last argument was, how good it was.
Yeah, and you stretch it as there's like word Olympics. People can twist their words around and almost win any debate. They could even win a debate they don't actually believe if you're good enough with words.
Yeah, so for me, I had to kind of arrive at a place where there are things I look at in the Bible and I'm like, I don't really understand how it works. And I'm like, but I know it does. And I know there are very smart people out there. And I know that there are answers out there if I go and search. But I don't necessarily need to wrestle with every single one of those all the time or argue with people all the time. So what I like about what Greg does and what it sounds like Summit Ministries does is that you equip people not necessarily to go out and find every single answer and debate every single person and win every argument, but to simply like have a plan in place and not give the stupid, easy answer. Because I kind of hate those little platitudes more than I hate like an atheist argument. Like,
Yeah.
I hate when someone does a really bad argument for Christianity or says something really dumb, and you're just like, I agree with you, but that's a really dumb way to get there. It bugs me. I don't know if there was a question there, but just
I just sort of picture all of the future arguments that a person's going to have. You know, when a student tells me a cliche that they're pretty sure of, I just kind of imagine, all right, you know, for example, a student said to me, hey, it takes more faith to believe in evolution than it takes to believe in creation, which I knew he had heard at a workshop someplace. But I just kind of imagined him saying that in class to the biology professor.
Yeah.
And
he's dropping Frank Turek. Right?
Oh,
it's Frank Turek.
Well,
I don't have enough faith to be an atheist.
Yeah. This is the drop kick the evolution through the goalpost kind of thing. But you know, every biology professor in America is ready for that. They know exactly what to say. They know how to respond. They know how to get the class laughing at the student and all of that stuff. So I sometimes wonder if I'm just trying to help them not use cliches just as a self-protective measure. But what if instead, you know, you were talking earlier about how you've kind of felt like you had to have every argument, and that makes it about you then, right? So it does the same thing, ironically, that having some of these cliches does to us. It makes it all about me and whether I can respond and whether I sound smart and whether I can convince myself. But if it really is about God and about his world, I mean, if Jesus really is not only our Savior, but gives us a framework for understanding all of reality, then I can relax from having to obsess about that. And I don't have to be the center of my world. I don't have to think that I'm the center of my world. I can just stop. Hey, tell me more about that. How did you get to that place? How did you arrive at that answer? You know, what happened in your life that kind of shaped your thinking in that way? And I don't know. I had was kind of a funny conversation here with a mom who was sitting on the sidelines watching our soccer. My son was playing in the game as well. So we sat down and started chatting, and she's really into meditation. She said, hey, I got to tell you about these new meditation techniques I'm learning. And she just went on and on about it for quite a while. And I just kept saying, hey, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that. But after about 10 minutes, she stopped and said, how do you see all of this? And it was one of those moments where I thought, okay, this is exactly why I'm in this conversation. Because now I'm not just saying, here's what I believe, hope you listen to me. I've been asked the question. And so I said, hey, I really am convinced that God is a person and not a force. And she just looked at me so stunned. She said, really? Why would you say that? And so I said, well, you know,
Star Wars is dumb. Sorry. I had to get that in there.
Look, Jesus is, Jesus is God in the flesh, and here's how I understand this, and how I understand God's nature. But she just could not, at that point, stop asking questions. So if God is like that, how do you talk to him? You know, how do you talk to God? And it was the most innocent, natural kind of conversation that took place, just because it started out with questions rather than with, hey, you know, this was something I saw on a church sign someplace, so I'm going to give it to you.
Mm-hmm. Then did you drop kick her through the goalposts?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was right. That's one thing you do in soccer all the time.
Go ahead.
Oh, you got something?
No, go for it.
This is purely my speculation. It's nowhere in Scripture. But I have this curious... I mean, I know that God makes us each unique. And I wonder, what do you think about the idea that God gives us each... I don't know if he gives us doubt, but it seems like we each have different capacities for how far our doubt goes or how much we question. And because I have found myself having to keep myself from being too judgmental of other Christians. Sometimes I have to go, you know, so maybe God just made me differently. This is the way my mind works. Like I have a much harder time accepting axioms and things like that. And I don't even want to say it in an insulting way. Like, I think that for some people, maybe they're just, their energy, it saves their energy to like go other, the nice little old lady at church who completely lives on a few axioms, Christian axioms or whatever. She's a complete servant, and she's, a complete minister and a prayer warrior. Maybe she has an amazing prayer life because she's not spending all her time doubting and questioning. So I don't know. Like, do you think there's anything to that? I mean, and that's just purely a thought as we talk. It's not from your notes or anything.
No. I think it's fair to say that your mind does work differently than anybody else's.
Yeah, That's say, fair. Especially with Ethan.
That's fair to say.
Do you think that God's involved in that? Or do you think that's just purely circumstances?
I think it's a fair point. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why somebody would accept a simple answer rather than try to dig into it. It could just be the complexity of life. It could just be that's what's worked for them. Could be they haven't ever really run up against any challenges that would require them to think differently about that. But, man, I'm telling you, when I ask questions like, hey, how did you arrive at that belief? Or, what happened in your life? What's your story? I have never found that person to actually exist that you're describing. Everybody can say, hey, look, if I'm going to be really honest with you, this is what I wrestle with. And it's old people, young people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I found there's people that, I think nobody's going to be like, no, I don't need an answer to that. I'm good. But I do find, even when I was in teen ministry and young life, there was times where I would, kids would want the answers to those things. But a lot of them are, it's getting into weeds to try to really talk about why would God allow evil, or why did God create Satan, or those kinds of. It's not a simple platitude answer, and they've been living on platitudes, and they do want an answer. But if it's not one of those platitudes, a lot of them kind of zone out and don't want to. Or they may not be that interested once.
Right. Unless their parents had gone through a divorce or they had a sibling commit suicide. I mean, life has a way of confronting all of those cliches, right?
So you got to be in that spot where you need to hear it.
That's how I approach it with our students. Say, you may, if these bad things have not happened to you, I'm so glad for you. But I just want you to understand that anybody who has ever said, I could never believe in God, who would allow evil in the world, is saying it because they've gone through something horrible and they've tried to settle it in their minds that this is probably the only thing you've got in life, is that God just doesn't really care. So if you're ready to talk to that person and ask those questions and say, hey, sounds like there's a big story behind that, and I've got the time. Would you be willing to talk to me about it? It's a pretty amazing. But yeah, you're right. But think of, isn't that true in every area of life? If I've just stuffed myself full of some kind of food, it doesn't matter whether what you're bringing me on the tray is exquisite or not. I'm just gonna want it. I take it. Sure, that looks great, but I just filled up with 6 Big Macs. I'm not hungry anymore.
No, I'm not going to eat that Chick-fil-A sandwich. It's full of Big Macs.
I wonder
better analogy.
No, that's a good Christian analogy right there too.
Yeah.
Very important.
Do we still like Chick-fil-A? Are we mad at them?
Yeah, I don't know. I can't. It's just.
Are we still mad at them?
I don't know.
Oh.
I can't keep track.
They're still closed on Sundays, so there's points there.
They get some points.
A few points.
Yeah. So absolutely send us questions, people. And yeah, Jeff's book is on Amazon. Other places books are sold. It's called Unquestioned Answers: Rethinking 10 Christian Clichés to Rediscover Biblical Truths.
Good job.
I said that very well.
Yeah.
So you sure did.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
We needed it. We had to end with affirmation.
Yeah. We affirm you.
Yeah.
Coming up next for Babylon Bee subscribers.
We accept these platitudes because we believe that atheists are this devil character out there who doesn't have the answers and doesn't have any deep thinking and is going to be shut down with, 5th grade level arguments for Christianity.
Banishing all doubt isn't the point. Learning to think better and relate better is the point.
like some wolves showed up and everyone's getting eaten and you're trying to get up there to save them?
See, all you needed was a good question to buy some time.
Enjoying this hard-hitting interview? Become a Babylon Bee subscriber to hear the rest of this conversation. Go to babylonbee.com/plans for full-length, ad-free podcasts. Kyle and Ethan would like to thank Seth Dillon for paying the bills, Adam Ford for creating their job, the other writers for tirelessly pitching headlines, the subscribers, and you, the listener. Until next time, this is Dave D'Andrea, the voice of the Babylon Bee.